Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, September 13th. Hurricane Florence continues to churn slowly to the north and west, approaching the Carolina coastline. It'll arrive near the coast by early Friday morning. It is currently rated as a Category 2 hurricane. It did weaken in the past 12 to 24 hours or so. Yesterday morning at this time it was a Category 4 major hurricane, now a Category 2 storm. The central pressure right now has risen over the past several hours, which is all good news, to 954 millibars, the maximum sustained winds at 11 a.m., 105 miles per hour. And the slowing down process that we've emphasized over the past several days has certainly begun. Yesterday morning at this time it was moving along at a pretty good clip, 17 miles per hour, now down to 10 miles per hour, and that should continue to drop slowly over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. This is the latest colorized imagery look at Florence. Again, Category 2 at 11 a.m. Very last frame here shows kind of a little bit of a tightening perhaps of the eye, so it's entirely possible that the hurricane intensifies a little bit over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Certainly not out of the question that it climbs back to Category 3 status, which would be major hurricane status. Pretty symmetrical look to it. It will be moving over even warmer waters than what it is sitting on top of right now. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Again, that could contribute to some intensification again over the next 12 to 24 hours or so, perhaps back to Category 3 status. And here's a look at the latest sea surface temperatures. Right now, Florence, about in this region right in here. And notice this band of even warmer water right near the coastline here. And Florence could actually intensify a little bit as it moves a little bit closer to the coastline. However, one thing against intensification is the fact that it will be slowing down. That means it'll be churning over the same waters for a longer period of time, and as it does that, it'll cause some upwelling. Some colder water from underneath could actually help to reduce any potential intensification because of its slowing down. So there's kind of a battle going on here in terms of whether or not it'll actually intensify. We have a little bit warmer water as it gets closer to the coast, but at the same time it will be slowing down, causing some upwelling underneath, and that tends to cool the water as colder water from below the surface rises up to the surface. So it'd be an interesting, perhaps a fluctuation back and forth between Category 2 and 3 over the next 24 hours. Well, here's another look of the hurricane, going back and forth between a combination of infrared images and visible images. And what I wanted to point out here is the storm, while the central pressure has actually risen, in other words, it has weakened over the past 24 hours or so. Again, it was a Cat 4 yesterday morning, now a Cat 2. It's broadened out and kind of spread out. You'll see the storm actually getting broader and broader, more and more widespread in terms of cloud coverage. And that means an expanding wind field, perhaps not the same kind of maximum sustained winds, but a broader wind field as it gets closer and closer to the Carolina coastline. But again, continuing to move in a northwest fashion right towards the North Carolina coastline. Well, let's take a look at the big picture in the Atlantic Basin. 5 different systems on the scene right now, none of which are hurricanes any longer except for Florence. Joyce is tropical storm, Helene is tropical storm, Isaac is tropical storm, and this has not reached tropical storm status. This particular system will continue to move to the northwest, put some heavy rainfall down in eastern Texas, probably not going to reach tropical storm status. Helene will actually turn to the north and east and could have an impact on the United Kingdom in several days, and Joyce will basically fall apart as it moves into the North Atlantic. Isaac is a little bit of a dilemma. It continues to move west-northwest into the heart of the Caribbean Sea over the next few days, and there will be some sinking motion in the atmosphere in this region right here, so it very well could fall apart over the next 5 days or so. However, if it does manage to survive this sinking motion, it could spill out into the Gulf of Mexico, and if that happens, conditions could become a little bit more favorable again in perhaps a week to 10 days or so. So whether this is the end of the story for Isaac is still a little too early to say. Meanwhile, Florence heads towards the Carolina coastline and slows down. It then turns to the north and west, slides basically right along the Carolina coastline, and then over the weekend it'll push inland over South Carolina, perhaps northern Georgia, and then begin a loop around, touching eastern Tennessee and then West Virginia, perhaps even in southern Pennsylvania, before it finally exits off the U.S. East Coast by about Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, perhaps off the New Jersey coastline. The best rains associated with the remains of Florence for D.C., Philadelphia, New York City will wait until perhaps late Monday night, Tuesday, and perhaps into early Wednesday. But again, the best rainfall in the I-95 corridor region between D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City from the remains of Florence will be next week in the Tuesday time frame, give or take half a day. Charlottesville, for example, the best rains there will probably be on Monday. And again, it finally exits off the Mid-Atlantic coastline, perhaps the New Jersey coastline by about Tuesday night, Wednesday of next week. But the slow movement down the Carolina coastline will assure an extended period of heavy rain and strong winds in that part of the country, the coastal sections of the Carolinas. Wilmington, North Carolina, for example, could have heavy rain and strong winds for as long as 24 to 36 hours or so. Many hurricanes whip through an area, producing strong winds and heavy rain for 6 to 12 hours. Unfortunately, that will not be the case here on the Carolina coastline, where because it's going to slow down to a crawl, it could last for 24 to 36 hours in some areas. Well, let's take a look at the 12Z NAM, the 12-kilometer version of the NAM, just to look at the track here. It's pretty consistent now with the other models. Again, Florence goes right around to the southeastern part of North Carolina, early to mid tomorrow on Friday, and then it'll slide down the coastline to South Carolina and push inland over South Carolina, perhaps even over Georgia, before it starts to loop back around and ultimately comes off the Mid-Atlantic coastline by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. But again, this is the general idea here. It closes in on the Carolina coastline, grinds to a halt, just creeps down, a painfully slow process down the Carolina coastline, and then moves inland over South Carolina in a weakened state over the weekend, and perhaps even affecting northern Georgia before beginning that loop to the north and then northeast and ultimately due east by late Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. Well, we've talked extensively about the potential for some tremendous rainfall amounts associated with Hurricane Florence, mainly due to the very slow movement of Florence once it arrives right near the Carolina coastline. This is the latest 7-day forecast of NOAA. This pink region right here is 20 plus inches of rain. There could be some areas where they get 2 feet of rain right along the Carolina coastline. Now, notice here, the heaviest rainfall is basically in the Carolinas here over the next 7 days, but there is this spike right in this region right here. And this spike right here will not happen until about Tuesday of next week. Again, it could be late Monday into early Wednesday, but basically focused in the Mid-Atlantic region's I-95 corridor around Tuesday of next week, as again Florence will ultimately loop back around, perhaps pushing off the New Jersey coastline late Tuesday night time frame. So all this rain occurs around Tuesday of next week in the I-95 corridor from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City. But excessive rainfall along the Carolina coastline over the next couple of days as Florence painfully crawls southwestward along the North Carolina coastline and then the South Carolina coastline. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.